Welcome to the Fantasy Aceball podcast. This is your host, Tim Kanak. You can find me on X at Fantasy Aceball. And if you're watching live on YouTube, which you can find on YouTube, if you want to watch, you can find that at the Tim Kanak, Kanak for YouTube. And if you're watching, you can see that we have Ross Jensen with us here today. So I'm hijacking the entire Scout the Stat Line crew at this point, going back to back between Doc, Matt, and Ross. So we're just boom, boom, boom. We're nailing all these prospects right now. Ross, thanks for jumping on. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. Yeah, I had a lot of fun. You were on Dynasty Dingers, so now I guess we're returning the favor.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which I heard that podcast was like one of the highest rated ones. Matt and Doc both told me, and they're like, "Oh, it's all you. You're Hollywood, Tim." And I'm like, I don't know. I think it's more the topic. FYPD drafts are kind of important to people, but who knows?
It was a great performer for a podcast, especially kind of long form content. As far as like someone our size that's got the stat line anyway, it's really excellent. So, I do think you deserve some credit there.
Oh, awesome! Well, someone has to keep Doc in line. You know what I mean? I feel like sometimes it's easy to just let him run wild, but I'm like,
Well, I wanted to give him first pick because I was sure he was not going to pick Sasaki. That's why I was like, I think he had him like number 17 overall in his rankings, and I was like, what? But he just said he's got all the FYPD guys low, so.
Yeah, you have to with Roki. I didn't even rank him because I felt like it's not fair. So like in my prospect rankings, if anyone is looking at my prospect rankings, like, where's Roki? What? It's like, for me, I just the international guys. I just feel like it's cheating. In a way, it's like it's not really fair. It's like, okay, obviously Roki is going to be number one. Obviously, like Otani is going to be number one. I mean, there are guys that come over where you wouldn't put, like Imanaga, for instance. I think I had him in FYPD last year at like 16 or 15 or something, just because of the age. Because I'm like, okay, if you're trying to hold him for dynasty, what are you going to get? 5 years out of him? It's like instant. So that's cool. You don't have to wait for it, but you're not going to have him for 20 years, 10 years or whatever. So like there's a little bit of like, yeah, not everyone is going to be number one, but for me, like it's okay. Okay, Roki was number one. We already hear about Roki all over the place. We don't need to keep talking about him everywhere. Everyone kind of knows how great he is. So that's why I didn't rank him. All right. You there, Ross?
I seem to be struggling with my connection over here a little bit. I wonder what's going on.
No worries. You're on right now, so we'll play that one by ear. So number 50, you have Tyler Black at number 50, and I have Braden Taylor at number 50. And looks like Ross is freezing a little bit right now, so I'll talk a little bit about Tyler Black. There you go. I'll talk a little bit about Tyler Black and Braden Taylor. I had Tyler Black at 76. And I'm kind of surprised. So I want to hear your thoughts on why I guess you're still so high on Tyler Black, because I thought I might be high on him at 76, honestly, at this point in time. Braden Taylor, I have at 50. I love Taylor's power speed skill set. The hit tool is pretty terrible right now. And like I mentioned, I can't remember if it was with Matt or with Doc, but I mentioned that like the Rays prospects are like super toolsy. They tend to like get these super toolsy athlete types with like very low hit tools, and they try to develop the hit tool. It's almost like the anti-Guardians. Like the Guardians and the Rays almost have like this reverse hitting prospect thing where Guardians are like, okay, we'll take the super high hit tool and then we'll try to develop the other tools along the way. And then the Rays just do the complete opposite. Like, give me the guys with the most power and speed that you can find with terrible hit tools. Maybe they have good plate skills, though. That's one of the Rays things that they do. They do generally have good plate skills, like Braden Taylor, 15% walk rate, so can't complain about that. Still, near 28% K rate, but 55 extra base hits, 20 bombs, 29 steals. Like, it's some of the same stuff we talked about with Aiden Smith, except he's at a more advanced level. But I ran him through F scores, 85 contact, quite terrible. Everything else above average, though. 108 discipline, 105 power, 173 speed. But 85 contact is not a major league hitter. So he definitely has to work that out if he's going to make it. What do you think?
So basically, yeah. So I kind of fall more on the Guardian's wavelength. Like I look for a good hit tool first and foremost, because I think, I've kind of got a philosophical thought that typically it's power that develops last, and it's the thing that is most commonly developed amongst prospects. So if they've got the hit tool, they can figure out the power component. It doesn't usually work as well in my experience the other way around. So I've got Braden Taylor personally just a little bit lower because of that. But I'm in the same boat with like Carson Williams too. He's lower for me just because I'm worried about that hit tool. I just wonder if that's going to translate to being a major league hitter. And so I've got to dock guys for that a little bit.
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't know if you heard this. It was actually really interesting to me, but on Foul Territory, they had Victor Scott on. And they're like, okay, Victor, you're obviously an 80 grade speed. And I can't remember who asked him, but one of them was like, if you could trade that 80 grade speed for an 80 grade in what other tool, what would it be? And he said the hit tool. And that was so interesting to me because he was just like, look, if you have an 80 grade hit tool, you're going to play, like you're going to get paid, like you're going to start, like no matter what. So like, I just thought it was really interesting, especially from like a super speed type guy, or like if you ask like a super power guy and they would say the hit tool. I think that's pretty interesting because everyone was like, whoa, we thought you were going to go power or something else, like not the hit tool. But like that I think actually makes me like Victor Scott more because I'm like, okay, he's self-aware, so.
Well, he knows ball, and I mean, I think he's spot on. Like you could think of like the Luis Ariz types, and they're gonna carve out a niche, even if the guy's hitting near zero home runs. If he's getting on base and making contact with whatever is thrown his way, that goes a long ways. And I don't think it works the other way around. Or if you've got 80 grade power, you got to have at least something of a decent hit tool to be able to access that power. It's worthless otherwise, So I totally agree with him. I think that's very astute of him.
Yeah. So Tyler Black at number 50 here. Because like I mentioned earlier, I thought I was kind of the high guy still on Black. So it's interesting to see that your ranking of Black is actually higher than mine at this point, because I definitely have like playing time concerns with like the defense and the whole position eligibility thing. And like, where is he going to play? So what are your thoughts on Black, and what keeps you still so hopeful for some Tyler Black fantasy value here?
Well, for starters, I'm not one that generally overcorrects on my rankings after somebody's made a debut if they haven't set the world on fire. That's just kind of an approach of mine is, look, you give these guys time, you let them see how they're going to do. I know he didn't have the best type of debut. I think the defensive concern it's a concern, and I think that's probably a legitimate reason to dock him a little bit. I was really impressed with the amount of speed he started showing, which was great. And then he's got a little bit of power, great on-base skills, and a good enough hit tool, a good enough bat that I think he's going to be a successful offensive player. So that means a lot to me. Surprising speed. The defense is the biggest question mark.
Mm-hmm. I agree. That's like that's the one thing. It's like, okay, if you're stuck in a first base role, you have to have power. Otherwise, I don't know what you become, because like, even if you do have good speed and good plate skills, then what are you? No, like Shanuel. I mean, for fantasy value, I don't know. Like, he's got more speed than Shanuel, so he's going to get more steals. But like, I really hope that he can make second base work, because like if he can make second base work, then we've got a really nice fantasy player. At first base is just kind of an odd fit. It like changes the whole way you have to build your team if he's clogging that first base spot.
Yeah, totally agreed. I mean, he's a totally oddball profile for a first baseman. I don't think it's going to work out for him to continue playing there. But we'll see. I mean, stranger things have happened, I guess.
Yeah. So at 49, you have Justin Crawford, and I have Johnny Farmello. So I talked a bit about Justin Crawford last time on the last podcast, because I'm like right behind. I've got him at like 56 or 55 or something. So I'm like right behind you on Justin Crawford. I'm all on the Justin Crawford wagon here. I think like out of these rabbits, like that's like the rabbit that I want to bet on, because he's got some power still in there too. He basically across the board, he's just a good player at this point. Johnny Farmello is who I have at 49. Obviously, injuries slowed him down last season. I had him, I don't know, like 80 or something. But now that he's healthy again now. I'm willing to just like kind of bump him up way up my rankings. Because I think that's where his skill set belongs. That's where the tools belong here. In small sample size, only 46 games last year, he had 18 steals, 17 extra base hits, 16% walk rate, 23% K rate. So really great on base tools, good hit tool, showing the speed. Farmelo, to me, like I just think that he has like a young Charlie Blackmon type profile going on, like early Charlie Blackmon career. And Charlie Blackmon evolved from this like on base, high batting average guy with speed his first few years into a guy that also turned into a power guy. And then even when he got older, he lost speed, but then gained more power as he got older. I think Farmelo just has that type of profile. He's got the same kind of build. Obviously, he's not Coors, so he's not going to get that Coors bump. And Seattle's is a significantly worse ballpark to hit in, as you ask anyone. But who knows? He's still very young, so they can always change something with the ballpark by the time that he's up. He could get traded and be a piece that they trade for, for whoever. Mariners, Dipoto likes to trade, half his prospects before they come up. But regardless, I like Farmelo wherever he ends up.
Do you have a rationale for Farmelo above Taylor?
I think that I trust Farmelo's hit tool more, and I trust his eye a little bit more. I think he's going to strike out less than Taylor, and I just think that hit tool is going to develop to be better. And while Taylor might have more home runs and kind of like, I feel like Taylor, like a really good best case scenario maybe for Taylor would be to like just fill in straight up for Brandon Lau. Like literally like Brandon Lau leaves and then he just fills in straight to the same thing. Okay, now we got a platoon power hitting middle infielder again. Here we go.
Yeah.
Like, woo! Yeah. So Farmelo should be a guy who like plays all the time. I think that like Taylor has, he's going to be a Ray. He's probably going to get platooned, and that's going to limit his fantasy value too. So Justin Crawford.
All right. So Justin Crawford, he's a guy that I've probably been quite a bit higher on than most. It sounds like you and I are sort of on the same page when it comes to him, though. So that's cool. I think he's got a pretty excellent hit tool. He's got great pedigree, as you know, and he's got wheels. So he's a guy that I think is going to make an impact at the major league level.
Yeah.
And his game looks so similar to his dad's.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like the only thing he's missing right now is his dad's power, but he's young, so I feel like he's just something he's going to grow into.
Yeah,
everything else is there. He's going to be a sick fantasy contributor. 48, you have Sal Stewart, and I have Rhett Lauder. Sal Stewart's the guy that I have had the pleasure to see in person, actually, when he was with the Tortugas, and I saw him with Cam Collier and Carlos Jorge all at the same time. And when I saw him, I was like, this dude, and it was before anyone knew who he was. It was like, he was at Aceball. It was like at the beginning of the year, last year, not even last year, 2 years ago. And I was like, this guy's the best guy on the field. Like I went to that game to see Collier and Jorge, but I would just watch Stewart hit. And I was like, this guy's the best hitter on the field. So I know already why you like him so much, because the hit tool for him is insane. Like he's a really great hitter. The only concern I have, because I have him at like 133, is that I just think that like, okay, he's going to be like a boring like fantasy guy, because I think he's going to hit 280 with like 20 homers, and I don't know if there's really going to be speed there. So it's like his upside to me is just kind of like, okay, 18 bombs, maybe 280, maybe he gets 20 bombs in his best seasons. It's like Jonathan India. Is that like the best case for him? Might be like the good Jonathan India seasons, maybe. And then I've got Lauder here. Lauder barely qualifies still. I think he's like, I don't know, 15 innings away or something from not qualifying at this point. But even though he was not that great, like his Sierra was pretty terrible in the majors, I'm not really concerned about that. I just think that he's not going to strike a lot of guys out, but he is going to not walk people at the same time. And I think that the way that he pitches is perfect for that ballpark, because the Reds already have so many high end, like high K guys that are also going to allow bombs. And when you have already Hunter Green, who has blow-up potential, you have Nick Lodolo, who has blow-up potential, you've got Chase Burns in the org, you almost need like a Rhett Lauder to kind of like balance out like the high K type guys, because I think that Lauder is going to keep the ball in the park, a Great American Ballpark, which is very important.
That's a great analysis. We got a couple Reds here, which interestingly enough, a lot of people don't know this about me, but Cincinnati Reds are my favorite team. I'm wearing a Rockies hat right now, but the Reds are my team. I don't disclose that a lot, and I really try to avoid them when it comes to like fantasy and stuff like that, just because my biases can be my own worst enemy. I'm notorious for underrating pitchers in general, and Rhett Lauder is no exception. He didn't make my top 100. I've been called out a lot for that. Whereas Lauder, I've seen this prototype so many times for these guys that have like clearly a great eye, develop power, and so this is really a play that it's going to come. And you were saying 20 home runs, not real exciting. Like maybe that's like a Colt Keith. I want to say that I feel like the power potential could extend beyond that. Maybe I just think it'll come.
Yeah, that's an interesting comp, Colt Keith, because like Keith has very high exit velocities, right? But Stewart is not really exit velocity issues, or like exit velocity is not really his thing, right? I think though the ballpark is going to help it play up more. So like Keith maybe can hit the ball 113 or whatever, but he's in Detroit. That's going to hold back the power. Sal Stewart's going to be in a ballpark that's going to help boost the power. So maybe you get a similar or even better outcome just based on the ballpark. Just like how we saw Spencer Steer come over, and then all of a sudden he's really good. It's like, so I think that could actually, the ballpark factor here could actually boost Stewart's value. And a lot of people aren't thinking about that right now. When you're ranking prospects, you're not thinking about, okay, ultimately, what ballpark are they going to be playing in? And what lineup are they going to be in? Those are things to consider, especially if they're closer proximity guys. Like your next guy, number 47, Nacho Alvarez, who we saw in a little cup of coffee last year. I think he's almost like the 27th man on that roster. Like he's like the next guy up when they get an injury. I think he's a solid big leaguer, dude. But like for fantasy, I just don't know what there's going to be like for fantasy value here. I do like him as a real life player though. I've got a 47 Felton Celestin. So like I've got like, you've got here, okay, this dude is a pro hitter, like for sure. Like lock it in. He's going to be a hitter in the pros. Feldman, far way out, electric player here. I love the plate skills here. 352, 431, 568 at complex. Almost a 13% walk rate and 19% K rate. 17 extra base hits, 3 bombs, 5 steals. I watch him and it just reminds me of like Gunnar Henderson's profile. I just look at him and I'm like, okay, this is a guy that he has very superior plate skills already at a very young age. And I just think that he has that type of outlook as a Gunnar Henderson. Switch hitter too. So, like you got to love switch hitting middle infielders, unless they suck at one side. And then you find that out later, like Ozzy Albies, and then they never switch back to just sitting one way. But I like Feldman a lot to be excited about. Obviously, like high-end prospect that's far off. And that's about like where I would rank them. Like I don't like ranking those guys like in the top like 25. Like you're not going to see Jesus Made in my top 25. So what do you think?
I like Celestin a lot. I think that's a really good placement for him. Extremely high offensive potential. I'm a big fan. And for Nacho, we got to point out the obvious. He's got a really cool name, so that's why he gets ranked here. No, I'm joking, but I think he's showing some excellent plate skills, and that's, again, the same thing that I said for Stewart is there's a presumption coming from me that there's going to be a little more power to develop. So if he's able to tap into some more, we did see a little bit last year, and then he got that cup of coffee. He was atrocious in the majors, but he got a taste because he was showing those skills, like a little extra power. That month before he got called up, he was really with a lot more power. So I think that it's going to come. I don't think he's going to be like a home run hitting machine or anything like that. But if he has a little bit of power with the rest of his skills.
All right. So we are back. Just in case you're listening, you're probably like, what are you talking about? But we had some, if you're watching, you're like, oh, their clothes just changed. How did that happen? Magic. But we had a little bit of technical difficulties with StreamYard the other day. So we are back on here now. And we left off with Nacho Alvarez. And I had just made a very funny joke that was ruined due to bad streaming. Thank you, StreamYard. No, we love you. But anyway, I asked Ross, I was like, hey, where are you at on Nacho Alvarez versus Caleb Durbin, like the king, basically, of Doc, the king. This is Doc and Matt's favorite player right now, Caleb Durbin. So where are you at on Nacho versus Durbin?
All right. So first off, fingers crossed that our connection works well this time, because I got a lot to say on this topic and everything. So yes, he's sort of like I don't know, like this king of, I think, a subsect of STS guys, and I'm not one of them. I mean, I'm kind of on board. I think he could be a productive regular, but I don't see him as being like a star or anything like that. He's not my top 100. So I'm taking Nacho over him, and most of that has to do with age level factors. I think Durbin is really interesting. He could swipe some bags. He could be a productive player this year. He's got a pretty solid bat. But yeah, I'm taking Nacho over him long term.
I compared Durbin to Ryan Bliss, and I can't remember if I told that to Matt or Doc,
yes,
but I think they were deeply offended.
Why? I think that's a pretty good comparison. I mean, they're different kinds of players, I think, but to me, like a lot of especially the age level factors, they kind of align pretty well. Bliss had more power, I think, when he was coming up than Durbin. Durbin's maybe a little faster on the bases, but yeah, I'm kind of seeing something similar there too.
Oh yeah, there we go. Take that, Doc. 46. You have Bubba Chandler here, and I have Cole Carrig. And I actually love this, that you're not so super high on Bubba Chandler, because everybody is drinking the Bubba Chandler Kool-Aid right now. And even I have him at like 27. But I have like Quinn Matthews ranked ahead of Bubba Chandler, for instance. And so like I like to see that, someone else besides me is not jumping him to be like the next Skeens or the next, top 10 pitcher or whatever, because I feel like everyone is drinking Bubba Chandler Kool-Aid right now. And like, I like him a lot. But I think we should probably cool the jets a little bit on him, because he does have like more control. Like he got a lot better at the end of the year, but he's still working on his pitch mix and his command issues, because he's a newer pitcher. Like this is not what he always did. He's a quarterback, right? Like, so now he's like he's still learning how to become a pitcher instead of just like a killer thrower. And he's still in that transition. Cole Carrig is a dude that is super underrated, is actually slated to play some shortstop this year too. So he's an outfielder for the Rockies. One big knock on him last year is that he was 22 and the highest level he reached was high A. So that's really like the only knock I have on him is like, okay, he was kind of like there on age level, like even, and he was not playing ahead on age level like a lot of my other like top 50 hitters. Where, you like to see like a Sammy Basayo at 20 years old playing in AAA or whatever. But Carrig last year, undeniable talent, 283, 359, 491 with 47 extra base hits, 17 bombs, and 53 steals. Like, I think he can be like kind of like a Jarren Duran for the Rockies, with also like a little bit of shortstop thrown in there, which maybe makes him like a little bit like Rafaela, but he has way better plate skills than Rafaela. So like maybe he does Rafaela things tools wise, but I think he's a much better hitter and has better plate skills than Rafaela. So what do you think about Carrig and Bubba Chandler?
Well, I think Carrick's a really interesting player. I think the things he's got going against him is the age to level factors, as you mentioned. His performance for where he's at is good, but it's not great, especially for a guy who played most of last year as a 22-year-old. So, I mean, excellent speed. He's got power. So those traits that you really hone in on for fantasy are there. But the question kind of remains, is there enough development left in him at his current age for that bat to play at the higher levels? I think that's what we need to wait and see on. But I do think I like a lot of those comps. Rafaela, the thing is, like, even though he's got far better plate discipline than Rafaela was doing it when he was super young. So, you know, there's a little bit of a time advantage there. Like, we all sort of follow a similar kind of path, and there's variations clearly within that. But he's at a disadvantage from that time perspective. So I think we just got to wait and see with him. But I think he's a really interesting player. And if it does click, if that development for him is a little abnormal, then you've got a potential talent, you know, somebody that can really help your team. Bubba Chandler, let me switch over to him. So I got some interesting grief on X earlier this year about Bubba Chandler because I had him ranked too low, and I did end up adjusting and moving him up a little bit. I guess I'm just not quite seeing what everybody else is seeing there. And that's not to say I'm seeing something that is bad. And I will totally acknowledge that pitching in general is a weaker area of mine than hitting. And I'll also add in there that I tend to rank pitchers lower. And there's a lot of, I think, logical, rational reasons that I do that, just because there's so much more injury risk. There's a much lower correlation between ranked pitchers and major league success. So I think there's a lot of rational reasons to be a little bit lower on pitchers in general. Now, I'm always impressed when I meet somebody that, like, that's their speciality, like pitching, because I'm like, wow, like, it's almost that, like, that's so much harder for me that I tend to, this is just a strategy thing for me, but like, I tend to try to get the bats in fantasy and then trade for pitchers that are more established, who I know are going to be better. And that's always worked pretty well for me. So I kind of stick to it, but in general, I'm not seeing what everybody is seeing to get him close to like that top 10 area. It just seems kind of interesting to me. I think he's an interesting pitcher. He could be really good, but as far as numbers go, like, they're kind of in line with people that are much ranked in the bottom half of the top 100. So yeah, it's not there for me from a data guy. Like, it's I'm not seeing the same thing.
He's definitely like stuff over results. Like, I comped him to like Luis Heel with a Zach Wheeler slider is the comp that I threw on him. He's, like I said, he's still trying to figure out the command. People love him because he throws in the high 90s, like 97 to 99 is where he lives, and that's a pretty good place to live. And because he used to be a quarterback, so everyone's like, oh, he's a QB, he's going to be a great athlete, he's a great athlete, blah, blah, blah. So people like that fact, but, and he just throws hard. But so the main thing to look for with him is that from June 1st on, he actually performed a lot better. So if you're only looking at his season stats, you might look at 13.6 swinging strike, under 30 CSW, 22 K minus walk. That's okay. That's, it's above average, but it's not like anything superstar, But if you look in from June 1st on, he had a 26.1 K minus walk, a 2.27 ERA, and a .92 WHIP. So he did play much better in the second half. I think he started like actually figuring out like the pitch mix that works best for him to actually make the results kind of match the stuff that he has. Because before that, like Jackson Jobe even is a name that I'll bring up here. Like Jackson Jobe's stuff is a lot better than the results that we got out of him last year. Like way high walk rate, like like his swing strike rate was only like 12% or something like that last year. So, I think Chandler is actually one, though, who made a step forward to change these things. And like Jobe is one that I'm kind of questioning. I'm like, okay, his stuff is awesome. And now he's adding pitches this spring, but can he actually use the stuff in the proper sequence to get the best results is like the main issue I have. Like, I guess bringing it around to Jobe. But I think Chandler has made steps forward from, if you're looking at it from like sectioned off season throughout the season from just looking at like overall season stats as a pitcher.
Yeah, I guess I have one more comment that I would like to add in there. This offseason with our peak project, excellent point, in my opinion, that his stuff is there. It's clearly indicated in our numbers too. So,
yeah. So 45, you have Aiden Miller. That's a name that we discussed in the last pod. I told a story and stuff like that. So if you want to hear more about my thoughts on Aiden Miller, then you can check that out when I was with Matt. Otherwise, we'll leave that one to Ross because I've got Aiden Miller really close here. So hence the little green box is that like I was right behind on Aiden Miller. I think I've got him like 8 spots below you or 9 spots below you or something like that. I've got Franklin Arias here, who I think we also spoke about on Matt's pod, the one that I had Matt as a guest. But I think I let Matt mostly expand on him because I wanted to talk about him in this podcast. But Arias, even though he's super young, this is, I think, maybe the youngest guy. Actually, no, Leo DeVries and Walcott I have at similar ages, ranked higher. But he's one of the younger guys at this level that I have this high because he played complex and Aceball last year. But 309, 409, 487 slash, 9 bombs, 35 steals in only 87 games. He looks like a 5-tool player to me, Ross. I don't know what you think, but like like everything looks good, like from hit tool to like having good gap power to speed to plate skills, 13% walk, 17% K rate. And he did it at Aceball. It's not like he was only really good at complex and then at Aceball he sucked. Like he actually moved to Aceball and transitioned very nicely, which gives me a lot of hope for him, like moving up levels. But I really like him. I think he's a 5-tool guy. It could maybe, if everything hits right, like he could be like a young, like when Lindor came out of the box, he could be like a younger Lindor type when he comes out of the box.
I like that. That's a good comp. And he's a player I'm extremely high on. He's not on this list on my side, but that's because he ranks higher than that. So nice. Yeah, I think it's fair to say that I'm very high on him. I think he's kind of got it all, as you were saying. You were calling him 5 tools. Plate discipline is there. The guy that you definitely want to target when we're talking about dynasty prospects.
Yeah, exactly.
Big fan.
So Aiden Miller, what are your thoughts on Miller?
I like Miller a lot too. I'm not as big on Miller as I am on Arias, but I think there's some similarities there. Like he's got pretty good plate discipline, a good bat, some power. He's got speed too. So like he kind of checks all those boxes as well. I don't like his age to level factors quite as much as I like Arias's, but like it looks excellent. Yeah.
Yeah, a little more swing and miss versus Arias in that profile. 44, you have Cole Young, and I have Alejandro Rosario. So Cole Young is a guy actually I was talking to Curlin about because we were talking about, is he going to play this year for the Mariners? Because the Mariners kind of have like, right now, they've got Polanco, who looks like to be the third baseman, and then second base is just like a Dylan Moore, Ryan Bliss type combo. So my thought is Cole Young, who has always been a very young age to level, is he going to have a shot out of camp? Because the Mariners didn't add anything offensively. Like if he really can show like, hey, I belong, is he going to have a shot? My thoughts are probably that he's probably not out of camp, but I think by midseason, he could roll straight into that second base role. I think it's a very good possibility because he has a good hit tool. He has good plate skills. Like he has what you want that's going to transition nicely up to that level. For fantasy, I just don't know like how much value he's going to give you because he's not a speed guy. He's not a power guy. So like you're probably looking maybe at like 12 homers with like 17 steals, 18 steals, something like that. So it's kind of like, yeah. But then again, if you look at Jackson Holiday, like that might be what Jackson Holiday gives you. So maybe he's like a poor man's Jackson Holiday for you if you want to look at it on the bright side for Cole Young. On Alejandro Rosario, this dude has insane stuff. I'm going to just pull this up because he had the best F scores of any pitcher that I plugged in. Obviously, like we're looking at lower levels, but he had a 111 F stuff, a 110 F control, and a 140 FERA, which is definitely inflated by having a 33% K minus walk, a near 17% swinging strike rate, and a 35% CSW between A and high A. He was a college pitcher, so it makes sense that he would have good numbers at that level. If he can translate this to double A, especially like coming out of the gate, like this dude is going to be a stud. My comp for him is Brian Wu. His fastball is a little bit different because he throws a two-seamer primarily, so it has a little bit different movement, but it's really sick. I love his two-seam fastball because he throws a two-seamer like 96 to 98, which is insane. And he's got really good it's not ride since it's a two-seamer. It's actually run that you're going to get on that two-seamer, but it's a really fun fastball because like nobody throws two-seamer as a primary fastball anymore. It's usually either like four-seamer or sinker. Like no one's throwing a two-seamer. And then he also has an awesome changeup. So like he's going to be a really fun player to watch. He has other pitches too. It's mostly that two-seamer in the changeup, but he's got a 12-6 slider too. So he's got like the hard slider. I like him a lot. I think that he's a really fun name to watch. The Rangers, obviously, between like Leiter and Kumar, like I don't think he's going to come up this year because they've got too many guys that are also prospects. But and even there's like Teodo around too. So he's kind of like behind all those guys. But for like 2026, I think that Rosario is a guy who could just become like he has the stuff to become a top tier pitcher, like a number 1 or number 2 pitcher.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree on that. I think I agree with both your assessments. Rosario looks really interesting. I was able to nab him in a league of mine, like as an 8th round pick in our draft, which is extremely low in that league. Just because he was popping up on our leaderboards, and I was like, I gotta look into this guy, and that kind of resulted in I eventually ended up trading him this last season, as you know, the hype was sort of picking up on him. But yeah, I think he's a really good pitcher, and I got a lot of value out of that, by the way, like 8th round pick, and then later turned it into a major leaguer. So hey, I'm willing to do that kind of a deal, and it was offered to me. It wasn't me like seeking it out. So I think he's really good, though. I think you're gonna have to wait a little while to see how that turns into major league production, though. Cole Young, I think I really liked how you put that as sort of a poor man's Jackson Holiday. In general, I will say that I think he's got some more development to go before we see him in the major leagues. I think he could be up by midseason. I think that's a possibility. I think he probably ends up starting in AA again, and maybe moves up to AAA. We'll see. He didn't light the world on fire last year, but he was pretty competent, especially for how young he is at that level. So, I mean, if he steps in this year and he's grown enough to where he's lighting things up, I think we see him. I just don't want to bank on that. So I think if I had to pick, I would say next year makes more sense for him. But you're right. Like he's always been young for the levels he's been at. Anything is kind of possible with somebody that's, I think, 21 now. He'll be 21.
Yeah. He's going to be 21. So he played as a 20-year-old all year at AA last year, and he had made AA the prior year as a 19-year-old.
Yep.
So next at 43, you have Luke Keeschel. I love Keeschel. I've got him in I think I've got him in the 20s, 26 or 23 or something like that. And then I've got Tink Hence here at 43. Obviously, Cardinals fan, but so I'm going to probably believe in Tink longer than other people might. The stuff is just insane. Like, he's such a good pitcher. He's got a 108 F stuff for me. Like, he reminds me of Dylan Cease. Like, even like similar frames as Dylan Cease and similar like injury struggles. Everyone forgets that because Dylan Cease has been a workhorse the last few years. But like when Dylan Cease was coming up with the Cubs before he went over to the White Sox, he actually had his own injury problems that he was dealing with. But 16.3 swinging strike rate, 31.2 CSW, 271 ERA, 107 WHIP, crazy fastball, like tons of ride on that fastball. Also, really good breaking pitches, and the changeup also is sick from him. So like, I really like him, and like literally like his pitching repertoire, the way he throws, it's like Dylan Cease number 2. So I think he could, as long as he can stay healthy, I think that's the upside for him. He's like a number 1 or number 2 starter with a lot of Ks. It's just like, can he stay healthy and build up those innings is the only question that we have for Tink. And then on the other hand, back here to Cool Hand Luke, I love Keeschel. I'm just going to put it out there that I'll probably be talking more about him next pod because that's where he's out of my rankings. But the dude is a stud, and now is the time to buy because he's hurt. Because I think when he comes back, when he's healthy and he's just hitting again, his value is going to go back up. So like, just like now's the time to buy for Braden Montgomery. Now's the time to buy like a Luke Keeschel.
Yeah. Tink, it's interesting that comparison to Cease. I'm going off memory on this a little bit, but it seems like he strikes out less, but has better control than Cease just off of memory. But I can see it outside of that. I feel like he's been a prospect now for like 3 years, a top 100 sort of guy. So it'll be nice to see him like actually start making that transition to the majors. I don't know if that happens this year, but he's got to be getting pretty close. And Keeschel, I expect we see him in the majors this year at some point. So really good hitter, kind of a breakout prospect from last season, and great hair too. Yeah. Not like you, Tim.
Yeah. So next up, more pitching. We have at 42, you have Noah Schultz, and I have Chase Dolander. Schultz, I have at 29, so we're not too far off here on Schultz. I do understand, again, especially, like it's another case of like the results have not caught up to the stuff with him. The one thing he has done extremely well, which you wouldn't expect of a 6'9" guy, is his command has been insane for someone like that. Because normally these super tall guys, that's their biggest issue. Like Tyler Glasnow, when he was coming up, that was the main thing for him. He could strike out the world, but he was also walking the world simultaneously. He couldn't figure out the command as a big dude. So Noah Schultz, it's like opposite. It's like the dude has insane command, but he for whatever reason, he's not getting swing strikes. It's like he has really good stuff, and he doesn't pitch that many innings because they're babying him right now. I mean, he's a 20-year-old at AA, so you're going to give him, a little bit of grace as far as development when it comes to pitching. If they only have him go 4 innings, it's like, okay, it's cool. They're trying to save some bullets for when he's closer to the majors. Like, you're not going to ding a team for that. Like, you don't want the dude to get Tommy John or to like wear himself out in the minors as a pitcher. But the main thing for me, besides the innings, is just like, when are we going to see this stuff result in more Ks? Or does he kind of get stuck in this thing where it never gets there? So, like, my comp for him, because, of course, he's a 6'9" giant lefty. He looks like Randy Johnson, right? Like, as a pitcher. But I think that the profile is almost like a Logan Gilbert, where, like, Gilbert has really good stuff, really great command. But, like, is the results are the strikeouts actually going to catch up to how good the stuff really is? Because this is a thing that like Nick from Pitcher List talks about all the time too, is like he's like Gilbert should be better. Like, how come Gilbert is not better? Like, I agree, Gilbert really pops on my stuff. I think Gilbert can be better. So like, why aren't we seeing more strikeouts from the profile there? So that's kind of where I'm at on Schultz. Dolander, biggest knock on Dolander is honestly just that he pitches for the Rockies. And he has to, like, Coors is going to be his home park. So, like, that's the biggest knock that someone can have on him. The dude's going to strike a ton of people out. Like, I always told Welsh on Prospect One that, like, if you get Robbie Ray stats from him, that's pretty good. Like, he'll probably get a ton of strikeouts, pitch a lot of innings, but it's Coors, so he's going to get knocked around a bit. What do you think, Ross? No, did Ross freeze? Are we having technical difficulties again? Ross.
All right, yeah. Can you hear me?
There you are. Gotcha.
You're good on my side. I got I lost you there for a second, but you're good on my side.
All right, cool. You're here.
I was frozen. I don't know. So I'll start with Chase. I'm probably a little bit lower on him, and it's not because I don't think he's going to be good. It's just that I'm skeptical of that final season that he had in the college ranks. Like, what was going on there? Well, the stuff is clearly there. His last season with Tennessee, the results were not great. So it just enough skepticism in there, and his stock did drop a little bit as a result, not a lot, but a little bit. And so I'm just a little skeptical about how that's going to work out. And, I think when it comes to pitchers, so much has to do with the staff and how they use them. So he's certainly got a chance to be very successful. Schultz, on the other hand, I think is going to be a stud. I mean, as long as he can stay healthy and as long as like he continues to grow, I think he's going to be a stud. And I don't have many questions about that. I think the strikeouts are going to be there in spades, actually. Like, so I really like him a lot. I think in general, I just have the regular sort of pitching risk associated with him, and the fact that he's so big, like that adds a little bit more to it.
Yeah, I get that. 41, you have Moises Ballesteros. I have Michael Arroyo. Where do you have Arroyo ranked, by the way? Because I love Arroyo. Where are you at on him?
I probably have him about 20 or 30 spots down from here. I do like him a lot, though, and oddly, this is like one of those players that STS peak projections really like, and for whatever reason, I'm lower than they are on him. But he does kind of have it all. The one thing that I am concerned about a little bit with Arroyo is the strikeout rate. It's a little on the high end for what I would like, especially for a player with his profile. But he does have power. He's got speed. He gets on base. Like he does all the things right. And especially from an STS WRC plus projection sort of standpoint, they think he's got star potential. So yeah, I'm a little bit lower on him, but we'll have to wait and see. And honestly, most of the rest of the STS contributors are very high on him. So I'm a little bit of an outlier in that sense.
Yeah, apparently RoboScout had him at like number 2 or something for Dylan White too. So STS and RoboScout are like right there on like on like loving some Michael Arroyo. See, like I might be the high guy on him because I ranked him at 41, but everything is there statistically. Like 285, 400, 509 slash, 12% walk rate. You mentioned the K rate is 23%. So maybe that translates like if he was in the majors today, maybe be like 29% or something like that. 56 extra base hits though. 23 bombs, 18 steals. So like you love a 2020 guy who hits a bunch of doubles, which like in Seattle, some of those homers are probably going to downgrade to doubles because it's not a great hitter's park. But he is basically like, I look at him and his profile is basically above average across the board. Like there's not like one super skill. Like he's not going to steal you 60 bags. He's not going to hit you 40 bombs. But he's just like above average across the board as a middle infielder, which is very valuable. So like, I don't know. He could be like a good Jorge Polanco or like Matt McLean type as far as like stats across the board. I actually think his hit tool might be more consistent than Matt McLean's from like a career perspective, just because McLean relies very heavily on barrels and line drives. Whereas like Arroyo, I think could just like make it happen without needing to rely on like squaring the ball up. But I like Arroyo a lot. And then coming back now to Ballesteros. I talked about him a little bit on the last pod. Like the dude statistically is a beast, but just like that bod, like, yeah. I mean, like, I'm just like, this is, I just watch him and I'm like, this is going to be Sandoval, man. Like it's going to be Pablo Sandoval. Like he'll come up and have a few good years while he's young. But like, if he stays out of shape like that and gets older, like as a mid-30s guy, like I can tell you that it gets harder every year, and like I just don't. And we saw that with Sandoval, where he was just like dead at like 28 or 29. So like I just don't know. Like apparently he's lost like 20 pounds or whatever this spring, but like everyone does in spring, right? So like I just don't know. But like for me to really like, for me, like even in the fall league, he was awesome in the fall league too. It's like statistically he's really good, great age to level. It's just like. I don't know, man. Like, I just look at him and I'm like, okay, Alejandro Kirk was really good for a year too. Sandoval had a few good years, but like, what are we going to see here, like long term? Like, is this going to work with that type of frame?
I'd add this: it's not over for Kirk yet. He's got some years in him.
True.
He's going to have a moment, I think, eventually. But I think that's a very valid. Those are all very valid points. I tend to try to neuter myself too much from physical traits because I feel like that bias leads to some miscalculations. Like I'm always referring to these same kind of guys, but like Jose Altuve is a really good example. Didn't get a lot of like top 100 sort of clout back in the day. And look how successful he's been. Like he's had a great career. Obviously we're talking about something a little bit different here. Somebody that's a little stout, I guess, versus somebody that's just a little short. I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. I think he's been an excellent hitter, and we'll see how it works out. Apparently, he's a much better receiver and defender in general than I think people presume, especially based on his body type. So, I mean, we'll see how it works out. I'm just going to give him the benefit of the doubt until he shows me otherwise.
Yeah, it's probably the smart move. I probably downgrade him too much, but I just look at it and I'm like, oh my God. Just like, I'm like, I don't know how this is going to play. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, you have Kanak Griffin, who has like a Greek god type build at your number 40 spot. I've got Zebby Matthews here at 40. And come at me. I know he doesn't qualify based on time on roster or whatever, but like the way that I did my rankings is only based on innings pitched. So if you're under 50, you're in for me is the way that I did it. But anyway, Zebby, if you are still going to include him as a prospect, which he probably will start in the minors this season, just insane control. He has a 122 F control in my ratings, which like, I don't know. The only guy in my whole life I remember with like the control that Zebby Matthews has is Cliff Lee. Like Cliff Lee never walked anyone. There's like a season he had like 2 walks or something like that. So like I watched Zebby Matthews. I'm like, okay, if he could, he's a righty, but like he could do that like type of thing where he just like doesn't walk anyone. But probably like the more accurate comp and the one that I threw on is a Zach Eflin type outcome, but with a better fastball. Like basically, if you like give Zach Eflin a plus fastball, that's kind of like what Zebby Matthews is, I think. Because he does throw like 95, 96, whereas like Eflin's like a 91 type guy. But Eflin's calling card is his command. People are going to ding him because he had a 6.69 ERA in the majors, but his Sierra was 3.78 in the majors, and he had a 3.64 BABIP against. So I think like ultimately anyone should just ignore Zebby Matthews' major league stats. He was still actually had an 18.1 K minus walk rate in his 37 inning small sample size in the majors, which I think is way more telling than the 6.69 ERA. So I still love me some Zebby Matthews and Connor Griffin. I talked about him a lot with Doc. For me, I need to see more. Like if there's a high school guy and I don't see him playing in the minors or in complex or whatever, it's just really hard for me to rank a guy like that. Like I put him in the 80s, and I just have a kind of a rule of thumb where it's like, unless I have like some stats or at least like college stats, like I can't bump someone up into the top 75. So that he just floats there for me only for that reason.
Well, I 100% agree with you on both comments. I really like Zebby Matthews. I mean, look at what like Shane Bieber has made a career out of like being a control guy, and Zebby's got it. You know, he's going to be, I think, a good pitcher once he gets enough experience. Griffin, I agree with you completely, actually. Like I'm a little hesitant when it comes to the guys that I haven't seen anything with. But I also, and while I tend to underrate guys like that until I know a little bit more information, it also seems like the best high school bat that comes out of the draft is very often like one of those guys that is in a good position to be the best prospect in the minor leagues. So I'm giving the scouts, I'm being a little deferential to scouts on this one and saying like, he's probably got the skills that, I don't know, that everybody would be looking for in your top prospect in baseball. So let's see how it works. I'm going to be quick to adjust with him one way or the other, though.
Yeah, I probably will be too. I mean, like I was willing to move Max Clark and Walker Jenkins up quite a bit off of their high school draft seasons. But the thing is, both of those guys played. So at least we had some like small sample size to look at. Like with Griffin and Rayner, there's literally nothing to look at statistically except for high school stats, which are like don't matter at all. Just like do whatever with them. Like I think Doc was joking that Griffin stole like 80 something bags or something like that in high school. It's like, okay, what does that tell us? Absolutely nothing. So 39, you have Jet Williams, who I will not comment on. And I think this is hilarious because Doc had Jet Williams in the 75 through 100 range. Matt had Jet Williams in the 50 through 75 or whatever. And then you have him. So he's literally been on every single one of these podcasts. So I will not talk about Jet Williams, except for the fact that Doc and I had him in a midget tier, which is fun. But at 39, I have Christian Moore here. Talked about him with Curland yesterday. Looks like the Angels really want him to break camp and like turn Rengifo into that super sub Tommy Edman type, Bet Zobrist type guy. So like there's a good shot here that Christian Moore breaks out of camp. Now, how useful he's going to be is another question. He had a lot of homers last year in the minors, but like breaking out, it might be kind of a Colt Keith type deal here. He's going to have to adjust to major league pitching. his plate skills are already not the best. Like he had a 26% K rate at A-ball and AA. So like when you translate to that straight to the majors, he might strike out 35% of the time. And like that just might happen. And he might only walk like 4% of the time. So you're probably going to have terrible plate skills here. And you might not get the power that you want. But like I think at the end of the day, if he does break camp straight to the majors, you still might get like a 250 or 260 hitter because he does have a good hit. Despite the bad plate skills, he does have a good hit tool and he does have power. So you might get like a 250, 260 hitter with 20-something bombs from second base, which is not terrible, with like 8 steals or something like that. But he will strike out a ton. So like if you're in a points league, probably might want to stay away. But like or like OBP league, but for batting average for like a regular roto league, yeah, I guess you could do a lot worse if you pick Christian Moore to be your middle infielder or like just a random shot to be a middle infielder in a league like that. But I think longer term, the plate skills will develop a little bit better as he ages. But I feel like out of the gate, that's going to be an issue for him.
All right. So, I mean, it's the Angels. So I think our presumption is going to be he's going to be in the big leagues almost right away, if not from the start of the season. So that part is awesome. He has a chance to make an impact right away. I think you hit the nail on the head. The single biggest concern is his plate discipline. Is he going to come out and strike out a ton out of the gate, not get on base enough to the point where they're like, okay, you need to spend some more time in the minors? I think they're going to give him a good shot. They've proven it. They've proven it with Shanuel and with Neto. And so I think he gets a shot, but I think he's got higher risk than those guys too to be able to stick. So we'll see how it works out. Power's there, the bat's there, as you said. So he really was like when he first came out last year. I mean, he was lighting things on fire. Like he was kind of breaking our model. He was a model popper. That's what we like to call him. So kind of finally settled in and came back down to earth later on in the season. So, there's maybe some concern with that as pitchers were sort of figuring him out, pitching to him, and maybe we don't have to throw a strike to this guy sort of thing. So he's going to have to learn on the fly if he's going to be successful in the major leagues. We'll see how it works. Jet Williams, the haters are out, man. They're out in spades right now. He's my short king. Go get him because I think he's just going to have to prove people wrong right now. Injury history. Yeah, he's got the physique that's on the small side. So, people are already a little reluctant when it comes to that a little bit. I just think it's there. His health is going to be back and, he's got plate discipline. He's got speed. He's got some surprising power. I think he can be a very effective player. And I think now's the time for him to prove it to people.
Yeah,
he's the guy right now that I would be targeting in leagues because people are fading him.
My biggest concern with him is the hit tool, and it's not really the contact rate. It's more like the swing decisions, because I feel like he might fall into the trap of like a Edouard, Julian, whatever you call him, where he basically he wants to walk. Like he has a really good eye, and he like walks a lot. But like I think there might be an issue there because like just the zone swing rate for me kind of dings the hit tool. Like I want to see him be more aggressive in the zone. I just hope he doesn't fall into that trap of like taking the walks, which isn't bad for fantasy because he's fast. If he just because he'll steal bags. But I like him, especially age to level. He was producing as like a 19-year-old in AA. So I like him a lot. I've got him at like 51, so I'm like right here with you. Like I've got him like right behind. It's just the big concern for me is the hit tool. Is it going to come around? And is he going to get more aggressive in the zone? Because I have fallen into that trap before where I draft too many guys like Newbar, like Julian, whatever. And I just have a bunch of guys that are awesome at taking walks, but then nobody can actually create damage because nobody's aggressive.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think that's an interesting topic in general. And I think the general consensus is always like, well, the problem is they're not swinging enough. And I don't know if I immediately buy into that argument because I think it's generally speaking with a lot of these guys that you're mentioning, it could just be like they're not that great, I think so. Like, here's the thing: when Julian came up last was that last year or 2 years ago?
To a year and a half ago, yeah.
He was getting compared to Juan Soto, and people were saying he's got the same problem as Juan Soto. He's too selective, and it's like, well, wait a second. Let's take a step back. Does Soto have a problem? This is one of the best hitters, if not the best hitter in baseball, and we're talking about it like he's making really bad choices by not swinging enough. Like, guy gets on base like a machine. So I'm not sure that I just immediately buy that argument that like he's not swinging enough, and that's a problem. It could be. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think that's an issue with Soto. I think it's a feature, not a bug sort of thing. Yeah. It's part of his profile. I think it's part of Julian's profile. I think it might be a little bit of part of Jet Williams' profile. But what makes the difference is when they actually do decide to swing, are they going to be making contact? Are they going to be making hard contact? What does that look like? So, I don't know. I'm a little conflicted on that one. And that's not to say I know one way or the other. I'm just immediately kind of, because it seemed like there was a consensus opinion about that I just pushed back on a little bit.
Yeah, I get that. 38, Adele Amador. I have Amador in the 70s, so I'm a little bit behind. Obviously, like, he had took a step back last year. And it's not even really the major league stuff. His major league stats I kind of just throw out of the window. Like, I don't think any of that matters. But we saw at the end of the year he did better, but we saw less power and speed from him. Maybe the speed was on, but less power from him than we saw in the past. So I thought when he was coming up, I was like, okay, in Coors, maybe he can be a 15 to 20 home run hitter and, steal 30 bags. But I think now, like, watching him, and this is the comp that I threw on him, I think, with Doc. I was like, he reminds me of like Coors DJ LeMahieu, like really good hit tool. He's going to play second, some speed, but like, not quite a zero in power, but like I don't know if he's going to hit even 10 bombs. And like having a fantasy asset like that is a little troublesome. So like I ding him a little bit against a guy like Cole Carrig or Michael Arroyo, for instance, because I think that those guys are going to bring you a little bit more power. Noble Meyer, I have at 38. I think you don't have him in your top 100. And look, I convinced everyone I've talked to about Noble Meyer, I've convinced to go higher on him. Because I've seen him live. I've seen Quinn Matthews live. I've seen Jonah Tong live. I've seen George Klassen live. I've seen a bunch of these guys that came through Florida A-ball like live last year. And so Noble and Tommy White too. I've seen all these guys live. So Noble Meyer was by far had the best stuff. I will tell you, he had the best stuff out of all those guys by far. Like, it wasn't even that close. Like, the closest was him and Quinn Matthews. And the biggest difference is that Matthews is a lefty. And so like the stuff the stuff is going to obviously like play up a tick as a lefty versus a righty. But his stuff was insane. I saw him strike out 11 Yankees, and all those guys, like, that lineup was pretty strong. They had like Lombard and Roderick Arias, and like there were some good players in that lineup. But his pitch repertoire is insane, and all his pitches are good, and he can command them. I don't know, like his walk rate was terrible last year, but like, this is the argument that I made with Doc, is I'm like, I think a lot of that bad walk rate had to do more with bad umps than bad command, because I saw him throw live, and it's not like he was all over the place. When I saw George Klassen, I was like, yeah, that's terrible command. When I saw Jonah Tong, I was like, that command is not good. But when I saw Noble Meyer, his command was on point. He was throwing the ball where he wanted it to go. So I think it has more to do with bad umps than anything, the weird walk rate. So really, I'm not concerned, and his stuff was phenomenal. So like, I'm willing to wait on Meyer. I think he could be a Logie Gilbert. Like, I just think he's phenomenal. Like, literally, I saw him throw 97 up to 97 on the fastball. He threw a 94 mile per hour sinker, a 91 mile per hour sweeper, 85, 86 mile per hour slider, and then an 82 to 84 mile per hour changeup. When I saw him, just like insane stuff across the board.
So that may very well be the case, and I think I'm totally open to adjusting how I view him. I just need to see it. I just need to see it in the numbers. Almost 7 walks per 9. I know you were saying his control is better than what the numbers suggest, but I mean, it's got to be far better than that. If he gets that into the 3-4 range, okay, now we're talking. But we'll see. This year is going to be a big step for him. Like, to me, it's kind of make or break as far as numbers go, whether he's a top 100 guy or not at this point. The stuff may be remarkable. Just got to put it together a little bit. As far as Amador goes, I like your assessment. He came into last year with Baseball American giving him an 80 grade hit tool, and he struggled. And nonetheless, even though he struggled, he was moved into the major leagues. So it was kind of a conflicting year. And I can't help but think that he was cheating for power. And maybe this was like some direction he was given by the organization, because that really is the make or break on how good he's going to be, is if he gets some power. So I feel like he was cheating for some extra power. The Rockies may have asked him to do so, or, seek out trying to gather more, and maybe they gave him a shot at the major leagues as a result. I don't know, but there was something different last year. He did tap into a little more power, I think, than we typically see, but it was a huge sacrifice to the bat. And I don't know. I mean, maybe he finds that middle ground this year where he's hitting with enough power and he's got that hit tool skill back. I don't know, though. He's a little bit in flux. I just don't want to ding him too much, because it was an up and down year. There was positives and negatives. He took a step back as far as statistical production overall, but he made it to the major leagues. That's a huge milestone for anyone, especially as young as he is. So I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt now. And he's somebody that I've always been a little bit higher on to begin with. So we'll see this year what it brings, but he's either going to shoot up or he's going to drop out of the top 100. It's going to be one or the other. I'm sure of it.
Yeah. You have him basically where I had him like last year at this time. Yeah. So I might've even had him a little bit higher. So I think his hit tool, the hit tool is the one tool that you can lean back on and like be like, okay, he's going to stabilize a little bit here. As long as you have that good hit tool, like you can always something else can fall off. The power can fall off, whatever, it's fine. But as long as you have that hit tool to lean on, like you can make it work. So I think that like he's going to be a really good regular, no matter what. I guess my concern is like, is he going to be really good for fantasy or not? Not like, I feel like in real life, he's going to be a good player no matter what happens. It's just like, okay, is he going to be DJ LeMahieu here, or can he actually provide, more pop, and actually is that speed going to translate? Is he going to steal 30 bags in the majors? Because if you can be Luis Arias with speed, like that's awesome. So it just kind of depends on like how the tools follow the hit tool, is my concern with him. 37, you have Quinn Matthews, and I have Augustin Ramirez. Talking about Quinn Matthews a little bit, obviously as a Cardinals fan, I love him. I saw him live last year a couple times. Fastball slider is insane, 95, 97 mile per hour from the left side. The StatCast stuff that I keep hearing people ding him on his Stuff Plus now that there's AAA data on his Stuff Plus, but that was at the very end of the year where I feel like he had like kind of, I feel like the end of the year when he was in AAA, he was not throwing his best stuff. Like I think he was getting tired. Because he was only averaging like 94 on the fastball instead of 96, 97 when I saw him in Aceball at the beginning of the year. So I think that like he's still building up. Like even though everyone thinks, oh, he threw 154 pitches or whatever in one game, so this guy can throw 200 innings automatically just because he did it one time in college. I think like no matter what, you're still going to need to build up, especially even if you're the pitcher in college who threw the most innings. Like last year, he threw the most innings in the minors of any starter, and he was still only 143. So like, you know what I mean? Like it takes time for these guys. They're playing shorter seasons to build up to the 160 to the 180 innings. Like you're not going to get that automatically. Like the guys in college who pitch a ton of innings are pitching like 60. It's like they're not pitching. You're not pitching 140. Now he pitches 140. So it takes time to build up. The dude threw 60 or 80 innings more than he did the previous season. So like, of course he's going to get tired. That's a huge swing to throw an extra 80 innings than you did the season before.
Right.
So all in all, point being, like the people dinging Matthews on his Stuff Plus at AAA over a 4-start period, I think that's dumb to do that. Because in my model, he has a 107 stuff, a 97 control, 133 FERA. Like he has a 60 to 65 grade changeup, which I didn't even when I saw him, all he was throwing his fastball slider, in A-ball because I feel like he didn't need anything else. So literally just getting everyone out on a fastball slider. But he also has a curve and a 60 to 65 grade changeup, which I did not even see him throw when I saw him live because it's just fastball slider. But I don't know. I think like with the ramp up of the velocity that we saw, like I comp him to like a Cole Reagan's light. Like I think he can do that kind of thing. And like we already saw him do the velocity jump. So now like it's just like, okay, Cardinals, when is he going to be in the majors? Like I don't know what kind of games they're going to play with Matz and Steven Matz still around, and who else do they have? They have Miles Michaelis. Like they've got these guys. It's like just trade all those guys and let McGreevy and Matthews and these guys play. I don't understand what they're doing, but he'll be up at some point this year and he'll be good. Like I think out of the gate he's going to be a good pitcher. Like he'll probably be like a number 3 for like as far as like statistical. I think he'd be like a number 3 starter this year.
I like it. Anything to say on Augustin, or did you already cover him?
Oh yeah, talked so much about Quinn Matthews. You get me on a Cardinal and look what happens. Then you get me on a Cardinal and you've got to take over the pod, Ross. Augustin, you know, when he first got to Miami, he struggled, and so like I think people started bumping him down. The Yankees loved him. Obviously, like you know, when you trade for Jazz Chisholm, who has control, you have to trade a good player back, unfortunately for them. And like it sounded like their whole coaching staff was absolutely in love with him. But you've got a catcher with 111 mile per hour average or maximum exit velocity. He's really high average. He's in the low 90s on average. Good slash line, walks, steals too. Like I think that the Marlins, if they were smart, would play him at multiple positions. It looks like they were DHing him and catching him when he was in their org. I think they just want to get the bat in the lineup. Hopefully he breaks camp.
Yeah, so I guess my take on him is he was really popping up early last season, the first half of last season, high riser. I think he struggled a little to finish the season. I cooled on him personally a little bit. That was enough of a concern for me. The talent is clearly there, as you were saying, so we'll have to wait and see. He's outside of my top 100 right now. I just think there's a lot of other good catchers I'd rather have, but I do think he's a good talent. And in fact, like I drafted him in my home fantasy league and I got him in like pretty low, like 6th or 7th round. And I thought he was a steal at that. Mm-hmm. And in our league, like you're kind of dragging the bottom of the barrel there at that level. So I think that was a steal of a deal there. So I'm not like overlooking him by any means. Like he's definitely on my radar, but he's not a guy that I have in my top 100 right now. Quinn Matthews, I think, is a stud. I think he's going to be a really good pitcher. Another one of those guys that popped up quite a bit last year. I don't think he was on a lot of radars prior to 2024. So really excellent to see that. Those are the kind of guys I love, honestly.
Yeah. So next we have at 36, you have Chase Burns, and I spent so much time on Quinn Matthews that I'm gonna sit this one out. I've got Burns at number 19, so I love some Chase Burns. Nice. And the funny thing is, I actually have Chase Burns as my number 3 starter, and Quinn Matthews is my number 4. You've got them back to back here, so like we've got them like right in line as far as like, actually. Nice. Yeah, and then we have Jason Churio. I have Jason Churio at 36. I talked about him with Matt last pod, so I'm not going to get too much into it. But I love Churio. Love the skills that he has. If he can actually advance his power tool, which it looks like he's trying to do by adding a bunch of muscle this offseason, then like I think he has upside to be even better than his brother. The thing with it is that he's with the Guardians. The Guardians like to slow play people. So like we'll see if he can actually like jump the timeline here because he spent the majority of the time in A-ball, but he definitely has better plate skills than his brother. I would say that the speed is right there with his brother. The only thing that's really lagging right now is the power tool. So if he can actually increase the power tool, like I would rather like Jason has a better eye, just in my mind. He's got better plate skills. What do you think?
Well, absolutely. He has better plate skills. So does Ronald Acuna's little brother. So I just think, I mean, Jackson's already in the major leagues. I don't think there's any really conversation about this. And it being successful, I think there's a big gap between the two. That's not to say not to throw any shade towards Jason, because I think he is a very talented player. I just don't think that he's got the natural talent for hitting that Jackson does. Can he be a successful major leaguer? Yes. And I think he's got an easier path to it because of that plate discipline. I shouldn't say he's got an easier path because Jackson's already doing it. But if you were to put them both in the same time and place, I think Jason would have an easier path just because he's able to get on base and work counts. And that's not something that Jackson really does. That said, I've got him about 30 spots lower, 40 spots lower, it looks like. I really like him, but not quite that high on him. I think we'll see how it works out. He does seem like he's got some interesting buzz. And for context, I think I've had Jason Chourio rated in the top 100 now for probably 2 or 3 years. So it's been a while since I've been following him. I don't think he's in the same caliber as his brother. As far as Chase Burns goes, I mean, this is really like based on his pedigree coming into the draft and the talent that he showed at the NCAA level. So It's got great stuff. I mean, we'll see how it turns out after Skeens the year before. Like Chase Burns is like the next guy, right? As far as pitchers go. So we'll see.
191 Ks and 100 innings. Gotta love that.
Insane.
Yeah. Number 35, you have Cade Horton. I'm pretty down on Horton right now. I've got him in like the 80s or 90s. And then Marcelo Mayer here for me. So Horton, I just dinged him because of the injuries. He was hurt basically the whole year last year. And then even on top of that, even after I had ranked him, so this didn't affect my ranking of him. But then Clegg has been talking about how apparently people in the org are worried about him. So I'm just really concerned from an injury standpoint, and like that can really kill a pitcher. So it's like I've knocked him down for that, especially like, you know, if it's a reoccurring thing, that's very concerning. Marcelo Mayer, this is another guy that I had in like the 20s last time around when I was ranking, but I knocked him down to 35. I think a part of that, you know, he's been hurt too, to talk about it, but like, I don't know. I think that Mayer is going to be more of like the kind of like boring-ish type player who's going to be good at like everything, but like not great at anything. I don't know. Like I copped him to Dansby Swanson, so I think that's kind of like what you're getting with Mayer. Is like that's sort of like, okay, he's going to fill the stats. Like it's not a guy you're excited to draft, but like if he falls to you and he's your starter, you're cool with it. So I think that's just how he's going to be. I'm really curious what the Red Sox are going to do with this whole middle infield situation. Like, what if Bregman decides to stay? And then you've got Mayer come up, and you've got Christian Campbell, and Story's still there. And then all of a sudden, like, you've got all these guys. Like, I don't know what they're going to do. And even talk about the lower levels, you still have Arias and Cespedes. So it's like, what are they going to do there? But that's a good problem to have. But I'm just curious to see what they may do with these type of guys. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm actually a little bit lower on Mayer than I think a lot of people are too. But I think he had a pretty good season last year, and you know nobody's ever really questioned his physical attributes and the impact that he could potentially make. So I think that bodes pretty well, and I think honestly I've moved him up a little bit as a result of this last year. I was a little down on him the year before where he had some injuries and stuff like that. Horton. I think Horton is very talented. I can totally understand your perspective. I try not to over adjust with players due to injuries. I try to give them a little grace. Sometimes that gets me into hot waters because I stayed on like Daniel Espino too long as an example. So we'll see with Horton. I wish him the best. I hope he recovers well. If he does, I think he's got a bright future. If not, you're right. I mean, that's something that can wreck a guy.
Yeah. 34, you have JJ Weatherholt.
I know you're really high on him.
Yeah, future love of my life here. I've got him at number 13. I'm going to save him for the next podcast, but he hits the ball really hard and hits the ball a lot, so I love it. Kumar Rocker is my 34. Kumar had insane stuff last year. It sounds like, talking to Curlin, he actually got me a little pumped because I was kind of worried that the Rangers might, not let him start and not move Gray to the bullpen and do this stuff. But he thinks that even if Gray starts, that Rocker is going to make it, which is interesting. But I think Rocker, if he can convert what he was doing last year and just like translate it into this season, that's awesome. Like he's mostly fastball slider, so it's like, okay, there's 2 pitch concern between the fastball slider, slider is kind of like more like a curve, but whatever, it's like a 12-6 hard. It's just like a hard curve is what it is. But like if he develops a third pitch, like he's going to be a force. So right now you've almost got like this. Okay, is he just going to be like a young Luis Severino who only came in with 2 pitches and do that kind of thing and then get banged around after people figure out the 2 pitches, or is he going to be able to actually make it work? So that's the only concern I have with Rocker is like, can he develop that third pitch? Because the 2 pitches he has are both awesome. What do you think?
Rocker's one of my highest ranked pitchers. I think I have him at, what does that say on there? 18.
18.
Yeah. So I think he's going to be a stud. He really, it's been a long time waiting for people that were getting in on him like years ago with all the injuries and all the problems he's had. So I'm really excited. He really flew up our leaderboards last year to become the number 1 pitching prospect after Skeens graduated. After he started pitching, I guess. So I'm really excited to see what he does. I mean, you can't overlook the fact that this guy was still the number 1 pick after all the problems and all the injuries that he had that prevented him from being picked number 1 previously, So I don't want to undersell that. I think there's a huge talent here. He's just got to be healthy. And I think if we get that, we've got a front line number 1 type of talent.
Yeah.
Let's see. Weatherholt. I know you love him, and I hope he really lights things on fire. The only reason I have him down where he is right now is just because he had some health concerns. We just got to see how he plays.
Yeah. 33, Jack Caglione. I can never say his name. Caglione. Caglione. I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah, Jack. So
Jack.
Crazy power. Insane power. The main thing is people are concerned about the strikeout rate. But in college, this is the funny thing. I brought it up actually on the pod that we did together, is that he actually had less of a concern than Condon. So like Condon actually had worse plate skills than Jack. But like fall league so far in his little minor league stint, it wasn't the best. I mean, like it's not terrible, but 20% K rate. I'm almost more concerned about the walk rate than I am with the K rate. Like I'm okay with 20% K rate if you're going to hit 30 bombs or whatever. It's just like 5% walk rate really wouldn't cut it. So like hopefully he can just make better swing decisions, because I think that just comes down to swing decisions more than anything. Like maybe the eye is pretty good, but he's just swinging at the wrong pitches, like swinging too early, and that's going to reduce the walk rate if you swing at bad pitches and you hit it into the ground instead of making good contact. So maybe this is like opposite Jet, where you actually want him to wait a little more on some pitches to hit that meatball. That's going to happen every now and then. So I think that's like the one thing with him. But obviously, like power potential, there's like 40 power upside in there. Like you could get like your next Olsen or Alonso or whatever out of this guy. Carson Williams is my pick here at 33. I dropped him a little bit. Like obviously he started out so hot last year and like everyone was talking about him, and then he slowed down. And then now the Rays blocked him by bringing in Kim. So he's kind of like blocked as being a starter at this point. The defense will eventually get him in there. My concern with Carson, and you're going to have to say the same thing, is just the hit tool. Like, I just see this as like, to me, he's got the tools. He's got really great defense. Like, it's like taking Trevor Story. It's like Trevor Story who never had the chance to play in Coors. Like, you're taking Trevor Story and putting him in a bad ballpark, and that's kind of like what you have here with Carson Williams, I think.
Yeah. Carson Williams, I thought I was like lower on him. So I'm actually kind of pleased to see this. Just the big concern, I think, is he strikes out a lot, He's got the power, he's got the speed. I'm a little concerned with the tandem of the hit tool and the strikeouts. It's a little bothersome to me, so we'll see how it translates. But most of the industry loves him. So he started out hot last year, cooled down a little bit. Jack, we're just going to call him Jack. I actually don't see strikeouts being a huge concern with him long term. I think he's just very aggressive. And I think that's the concern. Like, is he too aggressive, as you were saying? So power is clearly there. But usually it seems like in these big power sort of prototypes, usually it's like selection plus power is what you want.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have to see how it plays out with him. Somebody that I think can get the bat on the ball pretty consistently but he's aggressive and he's swinging for the fences. I'm trying to think of off on the fly, like who is a good comp for that. Somebody that will hit a lot of home runs, but is swinging a lot. I don't know. You got anyone?
Eldridge.
I was thinking of major leaguers, but Bryce Eldridge kind of makes sense too. Yeah, for sure.
32. You have Sebastian Walcott. I'm glad to see that you're higher on him than Doc had him in like the 80s or something like that. I've got him at number 9. I love Walcott. I've got him over DeVries, and I think he's just got a better hit tool. But I'll talk more about him in the next pod in the interest of time. Hagen Smith is my 32. Hagen Smith is the other pitcher besides Burns who's picked. I like Hagen Smith a lot. Really killer stuff. I don't know about the command. I think it's kind of iffy. Even though he rates out on my F scores with a 97 control, I am still a little worried about the command because he's got like that Sale-esque arm action kind of like where he like whips it. So like I feel like when you're the type that whips it, if you get tweaked or injured, like it can really mess with your command. I think more like on a profile basis, you might be looking at like Yusei Kikuchi of last year is like what you might look at from like a statistical basis of what you could be looking at with him. But you know, he's got the fastball slider at the weird 3/4 arm action, which he always plays. Just ask Nick Lodolo as long as you can put it in the right spot and stay healthy.
Yep. Really interesting pitcher. I just want to see more before I get more aggressive with ranking him. As far as Walcott goes, I think that there is so much, like he's got excellent power right now, and he's been playing like far above what somebody his age typically is playing at. But I think so much of his ranking is based on potential that has not yet been fulfilled. And so I just want to see him reach that potential in the numbers. Like I want to see the production match what I'm expecting from a guy that in some places getting number 1 overall billing. James Anderson had him number 1 in his rankings. So I'm not ready to make that kind of a move yet, but the potential is clearly there.
Yeah. 31, Welbin Francisca for you, who I don't even have in my top 150. So I'm curious as to why, or you know, what brings him ranked so highly for you. Like he's on the radar for me, but not up there yet. And a fellow Guardian, I've got Chase DeLauder here at 31. I think DeLauder's main issue is health. The dude can be a doubles machine. Like I don't know if he's going to hit for a ton of like home run power, but I think he's going to be just one of these doubles machines. Like I comped him to like a lefty Matt Holliday type, who is going to be more doubles than power. Like maybe in his, if he can stay healthy, he might be a 40 double guy. Good contact, good plate skills, decent speed. So like, I think you're probably like as a rookie, if he breaks camp, maybe he gets between like, I don't know, 18 homers with 10 steals and, 260, 270 batting average, but a bunch of doubles in there, which 30 something doubles in there probably as a rookie. So, cause he had 32 doubles in 96 games last year when he played. That issue though is health. Like the dude just doesn't play enough. Like let's get on the field here, Chase, and stay healthy.
Yeah, 100% agree. Like I know I was talking earlier about how I tend to give grace to injured players, but I feel like he's got an established track record now. So I've got him docked a little bit from where you do. He's just outside of my top 50, but I really do think he's got a great hit tool and he's somebody that could make an impact. You just got to stay on the field. Francisca is one of those guys. I guess we're on the Guardians. Let's just keep talking about him. I just think he's got an excellent hit tool. Like he's been given some grief about like his size and how well that's going to work out. But I think there's an excellent hit tool there. I think there's some burgeoning power. I think he's got the potential at least to be an impact player, and he's one of my guys, so I'm calling it, I'm planting a flag, and I'm saying, Welbin Francisca, he's a guy you want.
This is my comment for you on him before we move to the next stage. Isn't he just a worse Angel Hanau? Because he's basically just a year behind. Like, he's just like right behind Hanau. Like literally, statistically, they've done like the same thing. They're both switch hitting middle infielders that are like smaller and like have like the same exact batted ball profile.
He's a better version. How about that?
All right. Yeah. Guardians know their type. They have so many guys that are all the same. Switch hitting middle
That's
infielders,
true.
50% ground ball rates with speed. And good hit tools. Number 30, you have Carson Williams. We already talked about him. I have Josue DePaula here, whom I love. And I would rank higher if he played at higher levels. 17.5% walk rate, 19.8% K rate, 268, 404, 405 last year. The dude is big. The power will arrive. Hopefully. The main thing is you just got to hit the ball in the air because like my comp from is the lefty Jordan Walker. So it's like I just want to make sure that this guy doesn't do the Jordan Walker thing and hit the ball way too much on the ground. He actually has better plate skills than Jordan Walker too. But I really like DePaula. It's just like let's translate some of that mass that he has. He got a big 6'3" frame. Let's translate some of that into more power. Because 10 homers ain't going to cut it, but he's got more in there, and I think that's going to develop. So I'm willing to bump him ahead of where other people might have him because I think that power is pretty much a lock, and he has way advanced plate skills and hit tools so far for his age.
Yeah, I mean, I think Chris Clegg said he was like a universal top 25 prospect, and I was kind of surprised by that. I think I have him like close to 70 or something. Like I think he's an extremely good prospect. He's a good hitter all around. You're projecting the power to come. And I think that's the thing that I'm waiting for is once we see it, then he's going to skyrocket for me. But really good prospect all around. I don't quite see the top 25, especially consensus comment, but I do think he's very good.
Yeah, I thought I was high on him. I guess not. 29. You have Jacob Wilson. I have Noah Schultz. We already discussed Noah Schultz. Jacob Wilson. I just wanted to get your thoughts on him because obviously 29, you're probably the high guy on him. Obviously, if anyone's been listening to date, they know that you love hit tools. And he's got the best hit tool. It's just a matter of like, what else is he going to bring to the table fantasy wise? Right. Like, do you see anything else developing outside of just him being like a shortstop version of Luis Arias or like Stephen Kwan or something like that?
I think he's got a little bit more power than those guys. Not a lot, but a little bit. And that little bit, I think, is just enough difference to justify his ranking here as a top 30 kind of guy. I'm trying to balance the risk and the payoff. And, there's very limited risk in his hit tool. So I think he's somebody that can make an impact. Could he get up to like 15 home runs? Like, does that justify top 30? For me, it does, I think.
Yeah. Cool. 28, Matt Shaw for you. I'm going to skip him because I'm going to talk about him next podcast. And then we have Cags on my ranking. Matt Shaw. What do you think, Ross?
I think he's extremely talented, power, speed. I'm probably a low guy compared to where most people have him. And our STS peak projections love him too. Could be in the major leagues this year. So let's see how well it works. I kind of get the feeling he's going to need a little more seasoning though.
Oh, that's interesting. Should be in the major leagues, I think. I think he should break camp. It'd be interesting if Justin Turner actually beats him for that spot. So next up, you have Charlie Condon. And I have Bubba Chandler, who I think we already talked about Bubba Chandler. So Charlie Condon, my thoughts on him, and we talked about him on your pod. It's just like all college at this point, terrible minor league sample size. Like, hopefully we can just throw that out and we're not running into like some situation where, and this is the thing that I had heard about Condon, and like anyone can just Google it, and there's rumors of SEC home, at home using cameras and stuff like that. His home splits was in college 482, 530, 1125 at home, and on the road 279, 367, 698. So big difference there between the home and road splits in college. So like that's like the big concern that I have for him is like, I mean, I don't want to come out and say like, oh, this dude cheated. I mean, like I'm not going to say that, but like I don't know. He was not good in his high sample size, so it's kind of concerning that he was not good, and he was also not good on the road. But the good thing is he has Colorado to call home park, so hopefully he can figure it out and turn things around this year. Because like obviously what he did in college was insane: 37 bombs, 58 extra base hits, just like 4-5 1,000 slash line, just ridiculous. So hopefully he can translate that to the minors this year.
Yeah, we have a NCAA leaderboard at STS, and he's like, since like 2016 is the number one ranked NCAA hitter for his season last year. So insane talent. I think I didn't want to ding him too hard, but just a terrible debut.
26. You have Dylan Cruz. You might be the low guy on Dylan Cruz at 26. That's super interesting. And then I've got Colt Emerson here at 26. And you've got him at 7. So super high on Colt Emerson, and then super low on Dylan Cruz. I'll give you my Colt Emerson take here. He's got a big body, and it's kind of like a DePaula situation where hit tool's great, play skills are great. Let's translate some of that into more power at this point. Like right now, if he doesn't get more power, he's just like a bigger, more athletic Brandon Donovan. But I think that he's going to grow into that power. I mean, he's young. It's if he doesn't, it'd be like a Cabron Hayes or like Jason Hayward type situation where the power just for whatever reason never develops because he's got the big frame. So like I like him, except for that he doesn't have the power yet and he needs to get there. So that's why I only have him at 26. If we had already seen this power kind of escalating in his progression, then I'd probably have him closer to where you have him. Maybe not in the top 10, but probably like right outside of it because I think that the hit tool and the plate skills aren't that good.
Yeah, I love Colt Emerson. I was one of the I tabbed him as like I think he could be the next like number 1. So I'm sticking with it. I think last year was a disappointing year. Had some health issues, but I still think it's there. Great hit tool, great the burgeoning power. I think he's going to be really good.
And then what are your final thoughts here then on Dylan Cruz? Because you can't not explain Dylan Cruz at 26 here, Ross.
I just like I haven't seen it. I mean, I need to see it. Like he was a great college player. I expected a lot from him. I had him ranked really high, but I haven't seen it. Not in the minors, not in the pros. So just got to see it.
Yeah, the potential's there. The interesting thing has been the speed, I think, because like he didn't really steal in college, and then now we're seeing like a ton of speed, and he looks like a 30 steal guy. So I think like from a fantasy standpoint, that's like the interesting thing. Obviously, he had such a good hit tool and like kind of prestigious power in college that you hope that translate as well. So like if it does, like you've got a really great player, like you have a potential superstar there. But like obviously too, like bottom could fall out if the hit tool really isn't there. So like that's kind of the concern is like too many strikeouts, right?
For sure.
So that'll end it for us on this grouping here. You can find Ross on Twitter at Ross Jensen 12. Ross, you have anything else to promote while you're here?
Hey, check us out, scoutthestatline.com. That's all I got to say. Thanks, Tim. I love it. This was a lot of fun.
Yes, it was. Minus the technical difficulties. So much better today.
Right.
So much better.
No doubt.
All right. So you can check this podcast out and all my podcasts on Fantasy Aceball Podcast or on YouTube at the Tim Kanak. And find me on X at Fantasy Baseball. Peace out, everybody. See you next time.
Thanks, Tim. See ya.